And our word for today, voice. Voice, our word for today, and here to talk about it, Shayne Stanfield. Good morning, Shayne.
Good morning. Good morning, guys. Let us start by taking a look at the context of today's gospel, beginning with the relationship between a shepherd and a sheep. Sheep are herd animals that instinctively follow a leader. It is a shepherd that assumes the role of the leader by providing things like food, care, and protection for the sheep. Like most domesticated farm animals, sheep learn over time to identify and trust the voice of their shepherd for this leadership. Now let's take a look at the context of the sheepfold, or the pen that contains the sheep. It was not uncommon back then for various flocks of sheep to be combined to share in the protection of a common pen when needed. Each flock would then be gathered and removed from the pen in response to being called by the voice of its own shepherd. Jesus refers to this with the shepherd calling his own sheep by name and then leading his own sheep out of the pen. Notice that he added that the sheep of the shepherd would not follow a stranger. They would run away because they do not recognize the voice of strangers. This is interesting because Jesus began in today's gospel by identifying bad actors as those who enter the pen by means other than using the gate. But why then would these intruders even be a concern if each of the sheep only recognized and respond to the voice of its own shepherd? I think we have a clue with the fact that these bad actors are described as thieves and robbers. These are those forces that are trying to steal the sheep away, and this would likely be done in the most covert or deceiving ways. Of course, we know that we are the sheep, and Jesus not only states that he is the gate, but he later states that he's also the good shepherd. Only those of us that know the voice of Jesus will follow him when he calls. The rest of us either have no clue, or we're still struggling to discern that voice. Only those of us that know the voice of Jesus will not follow a stranger or an impostor, and will even run away from those voices. The rest of us will then find ourselves easy prey to those bad actors that are working to lure us away. Think of the temptation of the flesh, the world, and the devil. Remember that just like sheep, we must learn over time to identify and trust the voice of Jesus over all other voices. This happens only when we commit our lives to building a relationship with our good shepherd. We can hear his voice through Scripture and teachings of the church, but we can also hear him from deep within. Bishop Barron just spoke about this in his homily yesterday entitled The Voice in the Depths of Your Soul. He explains that the voice is your conscience, which St. John Henry Newman also calls the Aboriginal Vicar of Christ. While that description is a fascinating topic itself, I'll simply leave you with what Pope Francis had to say about this in 2013. So we also, like Jesus, must learn to listen more to our conscience. Be careful, however. This does not mean we ought to follow our ego, do whatever interests us, whatever suits us, whatever pleases us. That is not conscience. Conscience is the interior space in which we listen to and hear the truth, the good, the voice of God. It is the inner place of our relationship with him, who speaks to our heart and helps us to discern, to understand the path we ought to take, and once the decision is made, to move forward, to remain faithful.